My boyfriend's mom hated me. She hired a private investigator to prove I was a gold digger, but all she found was my empty bank account. Throw away because this situation is beyond embarrassing and I'm still dealing with the fallout. I'm 25F and my boyfriend Nathan is 28M. We've been together for 2 years, and his mother Patricia has made it her mission to prove I'm only with him for money. The lengths she went to expose me are so over the top that I'm still processing what happened. I need to share this story because I want people to understand how toxic some future mother-in-laws can be, and how class prejudice can drive people to absolutely insane behavior. Nathan comes from what you'd call old money. His family owns a successful chain of luxury hotels, and he works as a regional manager while being groomed to eventually take over the business. He drives a BMW, lives in a beautiful condo his parents bought him, and has never had to worry about money in his life. I, on the other hand, am about as far from a gold digger as you can get. I'm a social worker who makes $38,000 a year working with foster kids. I drive a 2015 Honda Civic that I'm still paying off, live in a modest apartment with a roommate, and have exactly $247 in my savings account as of last week. I grew up in a working-class family where my dad was a mechanic and my mom was a school secretary. Nathan and I met at a coffee shop where I was grading case files and he was working on his laptop. We started talking about books, discovered we both love hiking and indie movies, and genuinely clicked. I had no idea he came from money until our third date when he casually mentioned his family's hotel business. When I found out about his wealth, I was actually worried it would complicate our relationship. I suggested we split bills and pay our own way on dates because I didn't want there to be any financial imbalance between us. Nathan appreciated this and said it was refreshing to be with someone who liked him for himself rather than his bank account. For the first year of our relationship, I avoided meeting his family. Nathan said his mother could be particular about his girlfriends and that she'd be more accepting once she got to know me better. But when we finally did meet Patricia at a family dinner, the hostility was immediate and obvious. "So you're a social worker," Patricia said when Nathan introduced me, looking me up and down like I was something unpleasant she'd found on her shoe. "That must be financially challenging." "I love my work," I replied. "It's rewarding to help kids in difficult situations." "How noble," she said in a tone that made it clear she thought it was anything but noble. "Nathan, didn't you say you were bringing someone who worked in business?" I hadn't worked in business, and Nathan had never said I did. Patricia was apparently disappointed that I wasn't from their social and economic class. Throughout dinner, Patricia peppered me with questions that were clearly designed to highlight our class differences. She asked about my parents' jobs, where I went to school, State University on financial aid, what kind of car I drove, and where I lived. Every answer seemed to confirm her worst suspicions about me. "It's so interesting how people from different backgrounds find each other," she said over dessert. "I just hope everyone's motivations are pure." Nathan was mortified by his mother's behavior and apologized repeatedly on the drive home. "She'll warm up to you," he promised. "She just needs time to see how amazing you are." But Patricia didn't warm up to me. If anything, she became more hostile as our relationship continued. She'd make comments about how I was so lucky to have found Nathan, how I must really appreciate the nice restaurants he took me to, and how different my life must be now that I was part of their world. The worst was when she'd give me unsolicited advice about my career. "Have you considered going back to school for something more lucrative?" she'd ask. "Nathan could certainly help with tuition. I'm sure he'd be happy to invest in your future." She was constantly implying that I was using Nathan for financial support, even though I insisted on paying my own way and had never asked him for money. In fact, I was probably the first girlfriend he'd had who actively refused his offers to pay for things. But Patricia had made up her mind about who I was and what I wanted. In her worldview, there was no reason for a working-class woman to date her wealthy son except to get access to his money. The private investigator situation started about 6 months ago, though I didn't know about it until recently. Patricia had apparently become frustrated with her inability to find obvious evidence of my gold-digging behavior, so she decided to investigate me professionally. She hired what she later described as a very discreet and thorough, private investigator to look into my background, my finances, and my relationships with other men. She wanted proof that I was either lying about my financial situation or had a history of targeting wealthy men. I needed to protect my son, she told Nathan when the whole thing came to light. Women like her are very good at hiding their true intentions. For 3 months, this private investigator followed me around, researched my background, and compiled a detailed report about my life. He photographed me going to work, running errands, meeting friends for coffee. He looked into my credit report, my employment history, my educational background, and my previous relationships. He also investigated my family, my college friends, and even my coworkers to see if anyone could provide evidence of materialistic behavior or scheming tendencies. The invasion of privacy was comprehensive and creepy, but I was completely unaware it was happening. I just thought I was living my normal, boring life while unknowingly being surveilled like a suspected criminal. The truth came out when Nathan's younger sister Emma accidentally mentioned the investigation during a family gathering. She'd assumed Nathan knew about it and made a casual comment about how the pie mom hired didn't find anything interesting about your girlfriend. Nathan was shocked and demanded to know what Emma was talking about. When he confronted Patricia, she initially tried to deny it, then justified it as standard due diligence when someone new enters the family. I was protecting our family's interests, she said. You can't be too careful these days with people who might have ulterior motives. Nathan was furious and demanded to see the investigator's report. Patricia reluctantly handed it over, probably expecting it to vindicate her suspicions about me. Instead, the report completely destroyed her narrative about who I was and what I wanted. According to the pie's findings, I was exactly who I'd said I was. A dedicated social worker who lived modestly, had no significant assets, and had never dated anyone wealthy before Nathan. My credit report showed student loans, a car payment, and rent payments, nothing luxurious or suspicious. The investigator had spoken to my ex-boyfriends, all of whom confirmed that I'd insisted on splitting expenses and had never asked them for money. My college friends described me as the most generous person they knew, who would share her last dollar with someone in need. My coworkers told the investigator that I regularly used my own money to buy supplies for my foster kids and that I'd turned down higher-paying jobs in corporate social work because I wanted to stay in direct service. The report also documented my daily routine, which consisted of going to work, grocery shopping, visiting my parents, exercising at the free gym in my apartment complex, and occasionally meeting friends at inexpensive restaurants or coffee shops. Subject appears to live within modest means consistent with her reported income, the investigator wrote. No evidence of undisclosed assets, expensive purchases, or lifestyle inconsistent with stated profession. The most damning part for Patricia was the investigator's conclusion. Subject shows no indication of financial motivation in romantic relationships. Current lifestyle and spending patterns suggest genuine disinterest in material wealth. In other words, Patricia had spent thousands of dollars to prove that I was exactly what I'd claimed to be all along, a working-class woman who genuinely loved her son and had no interest in his money. When Nathan showed me the report, I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The violation of privacy was disturbing, but the fact that Patricia's own investigation had completely vindicated me was almost comical. I can't believe my mother did this, Nathan said, clearly humiliated. I'm so sorry, Emma. This is beyond inappropriate. Reading through the report was surreal. There were photos of me walking to work, details about my grocery shopping habits, descriptions of my apartment furnished with second-hand furniture. The investigator had noted that I drove an older car, shopped at discount stores, and appeared to live frugally. Subject was observed purchasing generic brand groceries and using coupons, one section read. Vehicle is approximately 8 years old with visible wear. Apartment appears modestly furnished with no luxury items visible. The report made my financial situation painfully clear. I had $1,247 in checking, $247 in savings, $23,000 in student loan debt, and a car loan balance of $8,500. My monthly expenses were carefully tracked and showed that I was barely breaking even each month. Subject's financial records indicate no significant assets or unusual income sources, the investigator concluded. Lifestyle is consistent with reported salary and suggests careful budgeting rather than access to external funding. Patricia had essentially paid someone to confirm that I was poor and living paycheck to paycheck, hardly the profile of a successful gold digger. But the most personally invasive parts were the interviews with people from my past. The investigator had contacted my high school boyfriend, my college roommates, and even my dissertation advisor to ask about my character and financial habits. Former romantic partners uniformly described subject as financially independent and reluctant to accept expensive gifts, the report noted. Multiple sources indicated subject often insisted on paying her own way despite partners' financial advantages. My friend Sarah from college had told the investigator, Emma would literally argue with her boyfriend about paying for her own movie tickets. She's the least materialistic person I know. Even my ex-boyfriend Mike had defended me. Emma broke up with me partly because she was uncomfortable with how much money my family had. She said she didn't want to be seen as a gold digger. The irony was incredible. Patricia had hired someone to prove I was after Nathan's money, and every person they interviewed confirmed that I actively avoided financial dependence on romantic partners. Nathan was mortified by his mother's behavior and wanted to cut contact with her entirely. But I convinced him that we should confront the situation directly rather than just avoiding Patricia. Your mom spent a lot of money to learn who I really am, I told Nathan. Maybe now that she has professional confirmation that I'm not a threat, we can move forward. Nathan arranged a family meeting where Patricia would have to acknowledge what the investigation had found and hopefully apologize for her behavior. But I underestimated Patricia's ability to maintain her narrative even in the face of contradictory evidence. The family meeting was a disaster. Instead of apologizing, Patricia doubled down on her suspicions and found new ways to criticize me. The report confirms that you're financially unstable, she said, completely ignoring the investigator's conclusions about my character. How can Nathan plan a future with someone who has no savings and is drowning in debt? I'm not drowning in debt, I replied. I have normal student loans and I'm financially responsible. You have practically nothing in savings, Patricia continued. What if Nathan gets sick or loses his job? How would you contribute to household expenses? She was twisting the evidence to fit her preconceived notions. Instead of seeing my modest income as proof that I wasn't after Nathan's money, she was using it to argue that I was a financial liability. And this investigator says you're frugal, she added with distaste. That's just another word for cheap. Nathan is used to a certain standard of living. I'm frugal because I live within my means, I said. And Nathan seems to appreciate that I'm not materialistic. You're not materialistic because you can't afford to be, Patricia shot back. What happens when you get access to real money? People change when they get a taste of luxury. Nathan was getting increasingly angry with his mother's refusal to accept the evidence she'd paid to collect. Mom, your own investigator said Emma has no interest in money. Every person he interviewed confirmed that she's genuine and caring. Investigators can be fooled, Patricia said. And people can put on an act for a few years if the payoff is big enough. It was clear that no amount of evidence would change Patricia's mind. She'd rather believe in an elaborate, multi-year deception than admit she'd been wrong about me from the beginning. The meeting ended with Nathan telling his mother that her behavior was unacceptable and that she needed to apologize and change her attitude, or he'd limit contact with her. I'm trying to protect you from making a huge mistake, Patricia said. Someday you'll thank me for caring enough to investigate. I'll never thank you for violating someone I love and refusing to accept the truth about who she is, Nathan replied. We left without any resolution, and Patricia's hostility toward me has only intensified since then. The aftermath has been complicated. Nathan is furious with his mother and has significantly reduced contact with his family. He feels guilty that my privacy was violated and that I was subjected to such scrutiny and judgment. I can't believe she had you followed like a criminal, he said after we left the meeting. And then she won't even accept what her own investigation proved. I've tried to convince Nathan not to cut off his family entirely, but I understand his anger. Patricia's behavior was invasive, expensive, and ultimately pointless. She spent thousands of dollars to prove that I was exactly who I'd said I was, then refused to accept her own evidence. The violation of privacy is something I'm still processing. Knowing that a stranger was photographing me, researching my background, and interviewing my friends and family without my knowledge feels incredibly invasive. I keep wondering what other private details about my life are documented in that report. But there's also a part of me that's satisfied by the vindication. Patricia tried her hardest to find evidence that I was a gold digger, and she failed completely. Her own paid professional confirmed that I'm genuine, caring, and financially independent. The relationship with Nathan has actually gotten stronger through this experience. He's seen how his family's wealth and status can be used as weapons against people they don't approve of, and he's committed to building a life that's not controlled by his mother's prejudices. I want to be with someone who loves me for who I am, not what I have, he told me. The fact that you've never asked me for anything makes me trust you completely. We're planning to move in together next month, splitting all expenses equally despite the vast difference in our incomes. Nathan has offered to help with my student loans, but I've declined because I want to maintain my financial independence. Patricia will probably never accept me as part of the family, but I've stopped caring about her approval. I know who I am, Nathan knows who I am, and apparently even a paid investigator knows who I am. If that's not enough for Patricia, that's her problem, not mine. The ironic thing is that Patricia's investigation actually provided the most thorough character reference I've ever had. Any future employer, landlord, or in-law who wants to know about my integrity and values can just read the private investigator's report that confirms I'm exactly what I appear to be. Patricia wanted to expose me as a fraud, but instead she created professional documentation of my authenticity. I couldn't have asked for better vindication, even if I wouldn't have chosen to get it through months of secret surveillance. Nathan and I are planning our future together, and Patricia's approval or disapproval won't factor into our decisions. She had her chance to get to know me honestly, and instead she chose suspicion and investigation. Now she has to live with the knowledge that she wasted thousands of dollars to prove that her son's girlfriend is exactly the kind of person any parent should want their child to be with. Honest, hardworking, independent, and genuinely caring. Sometimes the truth is exactly what it appears to be, even when people are determined to find hidden motives and secret agendas. Patricia learned that lesson the expensive way.